Hi, this is Emerald and welcome to the Diamond Net, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the golden shadow. Now, there's something that most people get wrong when they think about the shadow. Oftentimes, people will think about the shadow as the negative parts of the personality, and they conceptualize of it as some singularity, some kind of nefarious other that exists within your psyche that's trying to mess you over for no good reason. And whenever there are depictions of the shadow symbolically, oftentimes they'll depict it as like this shadowy kind of figure. But this idea isn't actually very accurate to how the shadow actually is. Instead, you can think about the shadow in the most mundane sense. It's the place where the sun doesn't shine. So it's not dark and shadowy and spooky or anything like that. It's just a shadow. And when Jung was creating the idea of the shadow, that's exactly what he had in mind. And because of this, when I think of the shadow, I like to think of the shadow more like a place than like other aspects of yourself. Think about it like a dark closet in the psyche where you split off parts of yourself and you push them there into the shadow, you lock them away so that you forget about them. But it's not like the parts of you that you put in the shadow are particularly negative or particularly nefarious. And really there are four main reasons why people put aspects of themselves in the shadow. One is to maintain an identity, another is to maintain a worldview, one is to cope with trauma, and the other is to cope with unmet needs. So we never put parts of ourselves in the shadow just because they're bad. In fact, all the parts in your shadow are 100% neutral. And so if we compare and contrast the shadow versus the golden shadow, those two things aren't actually different things. Now, usually when people describe the golden shadow, they're describing the elements of the self that are actually quite positive that are pushed down into the shadow. But what I would pose to you is that the shadow and the golden shadow are really just the same exact aspects of yourself, but treated differently by you as the conscious personality. So if we take the process of psychological alchemy into consideration, what we essentially have with the shadow is we have the base metal, and we can think of the base metal as something's lowest expression. And then when we integrate those parts of ourself and we exalt them to their highest expression, we turn the base metal into gold. And so what differentiates the regular shadow from the golden shadow is how you treat it. Are you continuously pushing it away from yourself and causing it to come forward in its base metal form? Or are you accepting it and embracing it and allowing it to go to its highest and greatest expression through the process of exaltation? And there's a very well-known fairy tale that actually has to do with this process of embracing the shadow and exalting it to its highest expression, and that's the Frog Prince. And so we can think about the frog as the base metal. It's the lowest expressions of your shadow. And when we think about the shadow as being negative because maybe we're expressing a certain way from our shadow that's very low, we can think about those as being the base metal or the frog of the personality. But then if you kiss the frog, if you love it, if you embrace it in its very worst form, then you're able to exalt it into the state of prince. But you have to kiss the frog first. So you can't just skip to the prince stage. You actually have to kiss the frog. And kissing the frog from a shadow work perspective means coming to love and accept the parts of yourself in their worst possible form. And there's a quote in alchemy that goes something like, "The prima materia is found in the filth." And the prima materia has a lot of overlap to the concept of a base metal. And that's because it's kind of the ugly, idiosyncratic, unrefined elements of ourselves. And so when we kiss the frog, we're actually kissing the filth. We're kissing the thing that we would typically go, "Ooh, I don't want to be that." So to give you a more concrete example, let's say that I have elements of myself that I would rather not have, and even I'm unconscious to them because I would rather not have them. So let's say that I believe myself to be unintelligent, and I try to polarize myself in the opposite direction to try to read a ton of books and try to know more and try to build the identity of being the intelligent person. But then I've pushed away all of these elements of myself that I consider to be unintelligent. And it's not as to say that they actually are. Remember, all of this is very neutral parts of the personality. We just tend to slap a negative label in on top of it like unintelligent, and we push it away from ourselves. And so let's say that in this process of polarizing my identity and saying I'm intelligent and I'm not unintelligent, I let go of parts of myself that have their own wisdom to them, that have their own perspectives, and that currently know more than I do as the conscious personality because I've repressed them. And so let's say that these parts of myself contain the wisdom of simplicity, something that doesn't have to be super intellectual, something that can just be straightforwardly as it is. And so that's the prince of these parts of myself that I have pushed away. So once I kiss the frog and I get the prince, I actually get the ability to approach things simplistically, which actually adds to my ability to operate in life in an intelligent way. But in order for me to get the prince, I actually have to kiss the frog. So I have to be able to love and accept myself, even if my deepest vulnerability were true. What if it were the case that I were unintelligent? And so I have to kiss the deeply unintelligent frog in order to get the prince of simplicity. And so that's how you turn the base metal into gold. You kiss the base metal while it's down there in the filth. And then what happens is that it turns into the gold. And when you do this, you can actually access your shadow's wisdom. Hey, Editing Emerald here. I wanted to let you know that tomorrow, Saturday, May 16th, I'm going to be having a free live workshop called Shadow Work, Breaking the Cycle of Self-Sabotage. It's going to be about a 75-minute long workshop. I'm going to be having Q&A at the end. And there's more information about it down in the description box, including a registration link where you can register to either attend or get a replay from the event. And this event is to kick off the week and a half long open enrollment period for my group program, Shadow Work for Self-Sabotage. And so if you want more information about that, I'm also going to put that down below in the description box. Now, a more personal example that came up for me back when I was a kid is that I used to have a really hard time fitting in with other kids when I was in elementary school up until maybe, I was in middle school, maybe 6th or 7th grade. And it was a constant ongoing problem because I was really like a social pariah in certain ways because I just couldn't figure out ways to fit in. And so to me, what I was trying to do all of the time was trying to push these like social pariah parts of me away from myself and to try to solidify myself as like a normal kid or even a popular kid. And it was really painful because it led to a lot of bullying and a lot of ostracism, and it was just a really difficult social time. And so I was always trying to plan, how can I be normal? How can I be popular? How can I be normal? How can I be popular? And while I was doing that, I was pushing away the frog of being the social pariah, and I wasn't letting myself kiss the frog and get the prince of what eventually came later on when I found a way to exalt it to its highest expression. And so when I was in 6th grade in middle school, I started to gain a group of friends that were equally kind of socially offbeat and social pariahs themselves, and we became this big group. And at first I kind of thought of us as a group of outcasts, and it was sort of almost like my own shame I sort of projected onto them for about the first year. But then when I was in 7th grade, maybe 8th grade, things really shifted with my perspective, and I started going, you know what, I prefer being part of this group. Like, I like the fact that we're a bunch of social offbeats. And I started to just get really, really excited about the fact that I am the way that I am, and that I've always been that way. And so it enabled me to kiss the frog of being the social pariah, really lean into it, and being able to really delight in what my friend Joe coined as nerd pride. And this enabled me to embrace so many elements of my nature without that constant trying to be normal or popular, and I could just be myself. I had my social group, and once I learned to accept myself, even like all of the bullying and stuff went away. And that's because when you really get in touch with yourself, people can feel that you're more connected to your sense of sovereignty. And so things got better for me across the board. And it came through kissing the frog. It came through embracing the filth. And then from there, base metal turned into gold. And it became the basis of really being able to embrace who I am fundamentally as a person without trying to change myself. And so that's exactly how you integrate the golden shadow, is you kiss the frog of the personality first. That means you come to love and accept and really appreciate and prefer the parts of yourself that you would typically see as bad or inferior or negative or weak or terrible or stupid or whatever else that it would be that you would label these parts out as. And like I said before, worldview and identity tend to be one of the main reasons why we push elements of ourself into the shadow. So if we can change our worldview to see those qualities that we've considered negative, and we can find the positive in those qualities, and then we can come to embrace the most positive expression of them, that puts us well on our way to turning base metal into gold. But where it gets the most challenging to realize the golden shadow is when your shadow is operating in ways that are of detriment to you, or that seem to be of detriment detriment to you. You see, the reality is that regardless of whether your shadow is causing you to self-sabotage, procrastinate, get in your own way, lose relationships, or anything else, what's happening there is that that part of you is trying to serve you in some way, shape, or form. It's just doing so in a way that runs counter to the goals of your conscious personality. For example, let's say that you're trying to get a promotion at work, but your shadow comes in and sabotages you and trips you right at the finish line when you are about to qualify for that. It can be very difficult to kiss the frog then. But the secret is that the shadow oftentimes knows things that you don't know. And it is trying to benefit you in some way. It's trying to protect you usually. And because your shadow is 100% you, it has self-interest to serve you. And so in this case, we can feel very, very upset with our shadow, and we could say, oh, why am I like this? But instead, what we want to do is we want to try to learn from the shadow. We want to understand more about why it's sabotaging us. And to give some examples as to why, maybe it's the case that that promotion is actually misaligned with you, and consciously you think you want it, but deep down your shadow aspect knows that you actually want to do something else instead that aligns much better with you. Or let's say that your shadow aspect that's holding you back is dealing with shame. And so it knows that if you get this promotion, there's going to be a lot more expectations and a lot more eyeballs on you. And so it trips you right at the finish line by causing you to procrastinate and self-sabotage because it's trying to get you to avoid experiencing shame if you happen to fail with a lot of eyeballs on you. And so let's say that right now at your workplace, you have a nice community of people that are all like on the same level. And so you're working with a lot of peers. But then if you get that promotion, you're not going to be their peer anymore. You're going to be their superior. And maybe you don't have your connection needs met in other areas of life. And so that part of you holds you back in order to maintain your social support system. So when the shadow is causing you to sabotage yourself again, that becomes the most difficult time to really kiss the frog. But it's also the most important time to do that because the shadow knows more than you do in this instance. And you actually have to tune in and listen to your shadow to understand why it's sabotaging you. And oftentimes people get this backwards. Oftentimes people will go, okay, here's the goal and I need to teach my shadow to get on board with my goal. But that's the wrong way to go about it. Instead, you want to be a learner of your shadow. You want your shadow to be the teacher, and you want to ask it lots of questions. You want to learn a lot more about it. And part of that is in trusting that it is indeed the golden shadow in disguise as the base metal. And keep in mind that gold locked in a dark closet is the same value as gold that's out in the sunshine. So listening and learning more about your shadow is incredibly valuable. Now, if you're looking for more help to connect to your shadow and get on the same page so that you can realize the golden shadow, then I highly recommend coming to my live event tomorrow, May 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern until 2:15 p.m. Eastern. And if you would like to attend the event or even just get a replay, you can register at the link down below in the description box. And if you're finding this video after May 16th, 2026, and you would like to learn more about how to get on the same page as your shadow and to motivate yourself in a more consistent way, then I highly recommend checking out my webinar, 3 Shadow Work Secrets to Get Out of Your Own Way and Reach Your Full Potential Without Having to Fight Yourself. And that link will be down in the description box once the event is over. But if you have found this video before May 16th, I hope to see you there at the event, and I'll keep you guys posted as I do more events in the future.